Does your family ever get exasperated with you for stockpiling such things as paper towels, bottled water, or toilet tissue? Well, they certainly can't object to you stockpiling money. Silver, the only money recognized by the U.S. Constitution. And your first 10-ounce bar of pure silver can be had at spot price with no premium by going to sdbullion.com/RP. And when you buy it that way, you'll be supporting Reluctant Preppers as well by going to sdbullion.com/RP. Thanks. This is a quick update to thank you for building our number of patrons to 76 and growing on patreon.com/reluctantpreppers. Soon, when we reach 100 active patrons, we're going to start sending out a 1-ounce U.S. Silver Eagle each and every month to one active subscriber, so you don't want to miss out on that.
Please help us grow by subscribing today at patreon.com/reluctantpreppers.
As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
Welcome back, Reluctant Preppers. It's been several months since we've had this wise and witty returning guest on our channel. Joel Salatin is the co-founder of Polyface Farms in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. He's here with us again on Reluctant Preppers to talk about how I can become a farmer and provide for my family even if I'm not a millionaire. Joel, thanks for returning to join us again here on Reluctant Preppers.
Thank you, Donegan. It's a real honor to be with you.
When we were talking just recently, you mentioned that there's a huge demographic shift that's happening in the food growing or farming industry and lifestyle. Can you clue us into what the big trend is that you're seeing and what that might have to do with people who are considering perhaps changing their lifestyle and moving out of the city or out of a suburban area into where they can really do some serious food growing?
Sure. Well, the average farmer is now 60 years old. And
average? I mean, some of them are 120? Just kidding. Go ahead.
The average is 60.
All right.
I mean, depending on who you read, they might say it's 59 in 2 months or something, but or some might say 61. But anyway, it's right at 60.
All right.
And it's been going up about 4 months a year for 40 years, and so what that means is that in the next 15 years, 50% of all of America's agricultural equity, that's buildings, equipment, land, all 50%, half of all America's agricultural equity is going to change hands. Now, a lot of it is going to children who aren't farming.
Okay.
Therein lies the golden opportunity for young people, or not so young, but anyway, for wannabes who desire to get into it. I mean, we're all familiar with the Homestead Act and the Oklahoma Sooners and all that. How the West was populated, 40 acres and a mule and all that stuff.
Sure.
And I think in many ways we are returning to that opportunity now. The land availability is just becoming more and more available. The problem is it's expensive, very expensive.
40 acres and a mule was free, right?
Yeah, it was free
if you farmed it.
If you could stay on it for 3 years, I think it was. I think it was 3 years. If you could hang in there for 3 years, you had it. And of course, that was easier said than done. There weren't grocery stores. There was almost no market, no infrastructure. You made everything you had to do. I mean, it was not easy. But today, we do have communication ability, networking ability, marketing ability, and frankly, we have an urban interest in integrity food and high quality food that continues to grow. And so from my perspective, marketing is now much simpler than it was 40 years ago when I was just starting out.
Yeah, with the internet and everything else, yeah.
Right. Well, just the interest. I mean, 40 years ago, people didn't even know the O word or what is that? You know.
Right.
and so today, people are much more aware of chemicals, factory farming, nutrition, that sort of thing.
Much more concerned about that. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people. Not certainly some people aren't. But a lot more people are. A lot more people are certainly aware of that. And so the thing that has kind of consumed my attention recently is so what kind of a system? The problem is when young people can't get in, old people can't get out. So both generations are stuck. One needs an exit ramp, one needs an entry ramp, and neither one of them can get on with this price of land.
Okay.
Because from about 73 on, for roughly the early 1970s, is where we saw this explosion in land prices, to where land has become, the market value of land has completely outrun its actual productive capacity. It used to be back in the 60s, the 50s and 60s, farmers could actually buy land from the production of that land.
That's really interesting. We recently had Gregory Manarino and Rob Kirby on. They were talking about when the price, the current going price of something makes it out of reach for the average person to where you simply can't afford it. And they said that's the definition of a bubble. And you just really made me think, because I remember when we used to live in Minnesota, there was some very rich farmland near there that was going for $250 an acre on average, and you really could make a go of it at that. But now with some of the urban expansion that's been happening in that same area and so on, it's up to over 5,000, 7,000, 10,000 an acre. It's crazy. And it's interesting because people say, well, what's the matter with healthy or robust prices at the real estate level or whatever? It's like, well, if it grows to the point where it simply makes an unsustainable business model, then it really is in a bubble. And that's very interesting. I hadn't thought about it quite that way in the terms of productive agricultural land. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, my 30-second soundbite on it is when Mom and Dad bought this farm in 1961, it was $90 an acre, and feeder calves were selling for about $180, and you could raise half of a calf on an acre. So that would be $90 for the calf, and $90 an acre to buy the land. Today, that calf is arguably, about half of that calf would be $250.
Okay.
So it's gone up from $90 to $250.
All right.
But the land has gone up from $90 to $7,000.
Yeah.
So you've gone from a 1-to-1 ratio to a I have to pull out the pocket calculator quickly here.
But
7,000.
Yeah, the economic model doesn't make sense anymore.
250 is 28. So we've gone from a 1-to-1 ratio to a 28-to-1 ratio, and we still get the same amount of rain, the same amount of sunshine. We get the resources are the same as they were in 1961, but it's a 28-to-1 instead of a 1-to-1, which is why what Grandpa did doesn't work today. The old business saying, "What got you here won't get you there."
Yes.
And so this is the reality of the situation. So there are people who I admire in my tribe, whatever, that believe. It's interesting that you're saying a bubble. They don't see a bubble coming. They think that this is here to stay and it's not going to change. And so what they're suggesting is that we're seeing a more European model where the wealthy own the land, and so land ownership becomes a financial defensive position. And managing the land becomes a financial offensive position. So people who don't have wealth manage the land, and people who do have the wealth own the land. I don't want to whatever jaundice this idea by saying feudalism or whatever, but it's more that way, and so the desperate need of the hour is for wannabe, for people who want to farmstead, who want to kind of have their bunker, to hook up with somebody who has land by making it beautiful, by figuring out how to manage this land, because land ownership is not cheap. It's actually quite expensive to keep up buildings and fences, and in most places, most landowners want to have their land use taxation. There are big tax breaks for if you actually make the land produce something, as opposed to just have it as a recreational.
Or even residential. There's a neighbor down the road, just a couple miles on the river. It's considered one of the most desirable. It's a nice scenic river drive, and several acres, and couldn't afford. They were going to get taxed right off their land. Residential property taxes are like $15,000 a year, and they started raising alpacas. And had the thing rezoned agriculture, and their property taxes dropped to $500 per year. Yeah, that's right. That's pretty consistent across the country. So there's actually a lot of financial value there. So I'll tell you, we just this year we actually leased a 120-acre property for $1 a year for that very reason. The landowners, the folks who owned the property. Oh, you were the lessee. You weren't the lessor. Okay, all right, go ahead.
No. This is not land that we own. So we rented it. We rented it from a landowner.
Yes.
Who was facing this very issue. They had this farm,
and you're the you open the magic gate of the tax savings for him. That's why he can do it for $1 a year. He's going to make thousands and thousands of dollars in tax savings by doing this. Okay.
Yeah, because the landowner was facing an $8,000 tax bill.
Yeah.
Well, goodness, it behooves them to rent it to us for $1.
Yeah.
and they save all that taxes, and they don't have to do anything. They can. They're older, and they don't want to have to go out there and dig post holes and fix fences and things. And so we're happy to do that in exchange for the use of the land. And now that's a pretty nice deal. But I know a guy. There's a guy in Missouri who actually has two landowners who pay him to manage their land.
Okay.
And so the thing to understand is that there are growing opportunities here to manage somebody's land if you know how to make it pretty, if you know how to do something. Now, one of the problems is, well, if you're gonna go farm it, are you adding buildings and things to somebody else's land, and you don't own it, and things like that.
Right. Yeah, all the sweat and love and blood and tears that you're putting into this land, and you have to, in the end, you're going to have to walk away from it because you can't hand it down to your kids, that kind of thing.
Right. So one of the things that we do, we now, we own our own farm here that Dad and Mom bought back in 1961, but we have expanded the farm business by renting. We now rent, 10, 12 parcels in the area, anywhere from, the smallest one is like an acre and a half, and the biggest one is 360. So, it spans everything in between.
Yeah.
And so when we go in and develop a property, build a pond, put in water systems, electric fence, whatever, what we do, those non-portable, non-mobile capital expenditures. Sure. What we do is we put those in at our expense, and then have a 20-year amortization, straight line amortization on that capital expenditure.
Yeah.
So 5% comes off every year for 20 years. So if anything happens, John Wayne, my fault, your fault, nobody's fault, regardless of fault, if we separate before 20 years is out, the landowner has to pay me the leftover capital cost of what I put on his property that's non-portable, that's non-movable.
The non-depreciated, the value that's still there, yeah.
Yeah. And so what that does, one of the neat things that does, most folks won't work out arrangements for longer than, like 5 years, 6 years, something like that. So what this does is it gives you a de facto 20-year deal.
It incentivizes stability in the relationship.
Yes.
But meanwhile, do you also, as the person who did who put up the money up front for those capital improvements, do you get to take the depreciation as a tax deduction against your earnings and that each year? Then that 5% out of 20 years or whatever.
Well, no, we just expense it. I mean, on our books, we just expense it.
I see.
It's just an expense.
Okay.
Excavation expense, whatever. Pipe expense.
Okay.
Fencing expense. We just expense it.
Okay.
So this depreciation thing is simply an arrangement between us and the landowner.
Okay. It's a prorated buyout basically of your improvements.
Prorated, yeah.
Okay.
Now that deals with some of the stationary, the capital improvements you're going to put on that land. The second thing then is, in general, you want to have as little non-portable infrastructure as possible.
Okay.
So one of the beauties of, I'll just say, our kind of farming, where we're pastured livestock, grass farming kind of thing, is that all of our infrastructure is mobile. It's mobile electric fence, mobile shelters, mobile shade. The water troughs are Rubbermaid. You throw them on the back of a four-wheeler and go. All the infrastructure, chicken shelters. You put them on a low-boy trailer. You can move them from any place to another.
Okay.
So essentially, we separate the property, the land, from the farm. So we view the farm as an overlay, if you will,
as a portable process. Interesting.
Yeah, exactly, like an umbrella. So you can put a farm business on property you own or don't own, lease, squat on. The median of an interstate, a public park, an easement, a conservation. I mean, there's a million places where land exists. I mean, even a suburban lawn. I mean, you put together three 3-acre lawns and you're up and running. The coolest story I ever saw about this was a lady I met up in Edmonton, in Canada, and she was, I don't know, 35 or so, and she just desperately wanted a farm, but she didn't have any land, she didn't have any money. She said, "How in the world am I?" And she lived in a 5th-story condominium in Edmonton. Well, she knew one lady that had a backyard, and a friend. And so she went to this friend, and she said, "Man, I just want to grow something. Would you let me put a garden in your backyard? It can be small, 10 feet, but 10 feet's fine." And her friend said, "Oh, sure, that'd be fine." So she went and put her vegetable patch in the lady's backyard. Well, the neighbor saw it, went to the friend and said, "Hey, you think your friend will put a garden in my backyard?" "I don't know. I'll ask her." Anyway, I ran into this lady about 18 months after this first garden was put in.
Yeah.
And within 18 months, she was farming something like 10 backyards, and full time. Quit her job. She was full time. Had a part-time employee. Her whole farm was hand tools that she stuck on racks on her bicycle. She bicycled from plot to plot, and was gardening and that was her farming.
I thought you were going to say after 18 months the cold season was finally over in Canada and she could finally plant. Just kidding.
Yeah, maybe so. So the point is, it took her 2 seasons, to get there. But that's.
Do you know what her business model was? What did she share some of the produce with the landowners then?
I don't know all the details.
Okay.
I know that I have read about numerous details. There is an entire business model where people actually garden for, for folks that are too busy to do it or don't want to do it, and actually charge by the square foot.
Okay.
So,
as a service, I see.
As a service, yeah, like a landscaping service or whatever.
Right,
And,
lawn care.
Instead of mowing your lawn,
Garden care.
I'll do a garden, and it's X amount per square foot, and then all that produce goes to the to the homeowner, and so that's one model. Obviously, another model would be something shared.
Yeah.
And another model would be I lease a spot from you, and it's all mine, and I take it to farmers market or my customers or whatever.
Or I make it such an attractive garden that it becomes a point of envy of all your neighbors, and you're just happy to have it. So
yes,
I keep all the produce, but you're just so proud to have such a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
absolutely. You raised a question earlier about these exploding land prices, that if they're not in a bubble and they're here to stay, and you said, and you really made me get the gears turning in my head when you said the European model, because it seems that one of the most remarkably different things. There's lots of remarkable differences between Europe and America. I mean, Alexis de Tocqueville wrote a whole book about it, but but if we look at one thing, is that the land ownership had been gentrified in Europe for centuries, and yet when the people arrived on the shores of this country, there was this, no matter whether you want to call it as a invasion or a land grab or educating the people, giving them some idea of what civilization can offer them or whatever, but there was let's just call it a land grab of maybe proportions that the world has never seen before, that happened during the Western expansion. So are those lower farm prices that you and I were kind of nostalgically sharing, anecdotes about, were they just artifacts of basically stealing the entire country, and then this is what it matures to, is you eventually end up with a real estate market that isn't part of that huge expansion, and then you've got to actually have this long-term ownership going on. The prices are much higher.
I haven't heard it put as succinctly as that. But I think you're probably correct. I think that, this is a young country. We just really filled out the country in about 1920 or so. Laura Ingalls Wilder was the Oregon Trail and all that.
Yeah.
So we really didn't fill out the country until just 100 years ago. And so I think there is a slinky effect. Economically, till you fill it up, and then till things till things develop to where they are. I don't think that's all of it, but it certainly could be some. And so now we've come to this kind of equilibrium, this steady state, and here we are. I had a fascinating lunch with an Austrian who was here. I was doing a biomass energy conference up in D.C., and two of us were assigned a table together. And every time a European, and we get a lot of visitors here at the farm from both Scandinavia and Europe, every time one of them comes, they just, these stupid Americans, they don't take care of their forest.
Yeah.
Forest, just everything burns up, and they're just throw them away. Terrible.
That we have a throwaway culture and a throwaway way of dealing with our natural resources and natural. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. When you think that we're spending $4 to $5 billion right now fighting forest fires, and that's just the cost of fighting the fires. That's not the cost of all the houses being burned up and all this stuff.
Yeah, or the loss of productive land, and everything.
And all the loss.
Yes.
Yeah. And when you realize that if we were actually weeding and taking out diseased, mature trees along, we wouldn't. I'm this permaculture with we need more forest and fewer trees. Our forests are way too weedy, and that's what the Europeans say. The Black Forest, the forests of Norway. They have these little robot machines. Every farmer has them. I was in Austria actually earlier this spring, and even a farmer that just has a 10-acre, 15-acre woodlot has a little what's called a forwarding cart with a knuckle boom loader hooks to the tractor and the hydraulics. He goes out in the woods and he cuts these trees down, and like crooked, diseased, dead trees, and he cuts good trees too occasionally, but most of this is what I call weeding the woodlot, opening it up, letting the good trees have more rain, more room, more sun, more nutrients, and then the good trees grow better, and you take out the weak ones. And the reason is because like 75% of all Austrian homes are heated with wood pellets. So there's this real thriving biomass market. So the farmer can go down and get really good money for biomass. They chip it up, make pellets, and then people in the urban sector buy it. In the U.S., our policy is send the military around the world to make sure we get cheap oil, and then spend $55 billion, fighting biomass fires because we're too stupid.
Neglecting and in the name of environmental conservation, neglecting to maintain our forests.
Right.
Yeah.
In the name of environmental, what I call it environmentalism by abandonment.
Yeah, hands off. Right.
Then what we have are all these huge costs. Just imagine if biomass had whatever quadruple the value. Well, guess what? People would take care of their forests, and there would be value there, and we wouldn't have all the degradation we have. So yes, you're exactly right. We do not take care of the resources, and so.
Just on that point, before you leave it, people look up the book, The Really Inconvenient Truths, 7 Environmental Catastrophes Liberals Don't Want You to Know About Because They Helped Cause Them, by Ian Murray. This is one of them. He talks about the absolute abandonment of our national parks, our national forests, and our forests in general, that by neglect we make them tinderboxes for massive forest fires rather than intelligently grooming them and harvesting them correctly. So anyway, go ahead.
Yes. And the thing is, when you do that, what people don't realize is that an acre only gets so much soil, rain, and sunshine, and so it will only grow so many stems, like square feet of stems, right?
Yeah, right.
It can only grow so much, and of course, the more fertile site, a better site can grow more square footage of stems than one is not. And so the question is, well, do we put this stem growth, do we put it on good, healthy, vibrant, productive trees, or do we reduce the good trees production by having all this weedy stuff all around them, and just have this this junk pile? And so I asked this guy. I want to finish the
go back to your Austrian story.
Finish the story. So I asked this guy. I said, you Europeans, you're always. And I said, look, I get it. I work in the woods a lot. We do a lot of work. We have a chipper. We do a lot of work in woods. I said, what is it? What's the problem? And it was one of these things where, sometimes you ask a question and you're kind of, oh ho hum, I'll get a regular answer and we're going to go on with the conversation. And this is one of those times I said, well, so what is it? Now, I wasn't expecting anything profound. Well, what I got was very profound. He didn't bat an eye. Didn't take him a second to even think. He just looked at me and he said, royalty. And, I'm sitting here hitting myself in the head. Royalty? That's the difference between American and European, forestal stewardship. What do you mean royalty? He said, in Europe, the average piece of forest, the average forest land changes hands only every 800 years. In America, the average forest changes hands every 40 years. And he said you cannot have a decent forest stewardship policy
without the long view
in a forest that's changing ownership every 40 years. And I just thought, wow, that is so. No, I'm not big on royalty, but it is profound. That's a profound thought that that how long these landscape stewardship cycles, and you realize that our whole country, is not even 300 years old.
Right. Well, that principle is also, I mentioned that book, The Really Inconvenient Truth. Another aspect of exactly what you're describing comes out in there is that when you have communal ownership of property, which everybody thinks, oh, that's wonderful, we should nationalize everything, They said when you have communal ownership of property or aggregate owner, that what you get is plundering, because it's everybody. It's like, better get what I can get out of it before anybody else does, because everybody's going to have at it. Whereas if you have this sense of true ownership, of true property ownership and stewardship, it's naturally, intrinsically, I want to take care of this because it's mine. It's the same between a person who really is a homeowner and owns the house versus somebody who is just, say, given if it's a low cost tenement house, or so here it's just you have someplace here. It was created by somebody else, but you just get to use it. That tends to get trashed right away because there isn't that sense of, I want to preserve this.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that's known as the tragedy of the commons, and that's what it's called. But other things play into this. For example, you're getting all my juices going here with all these conversations I've had with these Europeans. I mean,
sure.
One is their principle of primogeniture. The firstborn gets everything, secondborns don't. I mean, that was one of the reasons why, Europeans had all these mercenary soldiers, the Hessians and all this stuff throughout history, was because if you're the secondborn, man, you're out. But what that did do, it preserved these blocks of land. In the U.S., a guy has 4 kids, he's got a 400-acre place, he leaves it, to the 4 kids. Well, guess what? Maybe 1 wants a piece, maybe 3 want their money. The point is that it gets broken up. It gets all broken up, and then it gets dissected into little smaller and smaller and smaller pieces, and that's what happens. And then when you throw on estate taxes, which Europe doesn't have, we have these estate taxes.
Yeah.
Fortunately, they're better now, but boy, for years and years,
yep.
You could hardly leave it to your kids because you saddle them with all these estate taxes. So there are numerous policies that we have had that have militated against the general and ongoing generational transition of land, and we could complain about that and decry it, but that has played into the hands of this new generation of wannabe farmsteaders who are desperate to get on land, and they can say thank you to all these things we've just complained about, because it has created a climate of access that's almost unprecedented, that we haven't seen before. Now, it's not going to be a climate of ownership access, but it's going to be a climate of
lifestyle access.
Of at least lifestyle access. And so I think, we're seeing it in our community. The reason that we rent 10 properties right now is not because we've gone out and sought all these things. It's people coming to us saying, would you take care of my land?
Yeah.
I'm too old, or I'm working in town, or I grew up here. I don't want to be the one to lose it. We've got one property we manage for a guy who lives in Oregon, and it's been his family for 6 generations.
Well, that's true. That's another mega trend in our culture has been from stability to mobility. So as people have been moved, look at we got 5 kids, and we all grew up together. We homeschooled our kids. We were all under one roof together joyfully for so long. And now when they finish college, we've got them all over the country, and that's not rare these days.
Yeah. We had an apprentice finish with us. He was from upstate New York, up in the Ithaca, Syracuse area, and he finished with us, and he went up there and he just put out some feelers, and within a month of returning home, he had offers from three landowners, almost neighbors to him. 3 landowners said offered, and when you combined the 3 properties, it was 1,000 acres, and they said, look, could you just do something with this? I can't do it, and you can have it for free. Just do something. I correspond a lot with prison inmates, and I had a letter from a guy in Pennsylvania who's in prison in Pennsylvania, and he said, "Man, when I get out, I really want to farm." And I write to these guys. I think anyway. That's another topic for another day.
Yeah.
Prisons are a real problem. Doesn't mean I'm soft on punishment. It just, I think I think prisons are not a good thing. Anyway, so I write to these guys routinely,
Okay.
ongoing stuff. And this guy's, I really want to farm. He said, well, how in the world do I start? I said, so well, where'd you grow up? He said, oh, some town in Pennsylvania. And he said, when I was in high school, I helped there were a couple of farmers there. I helped them make hay and stuff. I said, listen, write them, tell them the situation, and ask them if they would let you use some of their property to start a pasture poultry operation or a produce or whatever. So he wrote 3 of them. He'd worked in high school for 3 of these guys. Wrote all 3 of them. All three. Not only did they write him back, all 3 of them said, absolutely, when you get out, come tell me what you want to do, and you can have whatever corner you want.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. So I mean, and this is a guy that's in prison. So I tell these stories to just encourage people who are, oh man, I don't have $1 million. I don't have $500,000 to buy. Just look around in your community. Instead of going out to eat or for entertainment, go work for a farmer. Help him build some fence. Help him make some hay. Help him work some cattle. Help him harvest tomatoes. Just for nothing. Okay, just put yourself in the place, in the place where you want to be. And Dave Ramsey says we tend to be successful at what we put our attention on.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of truth to that. And people need to understand that the future's not going to drop in your lap, but you have to put yourself in the place that you want to be, where you can be blessed with the opportunity that will come because you're there.
There's so much right about what you're saying. Gosh, I remember that book, What Color is Your Parachute, for people who are changing careers or making a job change or any kind of life change, and it says, talk to as many people as you can who are already doing what it is you want to do. So just that kind of networking, first of all, you'll learn, and you'll get a better read on whether this is the right thing for you by experiencing it and both directly and indirectly through their stories and that kind of thing. Second of all, you're making all these contacts, and lo and behold, some of those contacts are going to bear fruit that's going to be beneficial to you, in the very least, through learning, training, education experience that you're going to gain along the way, but possibly through some opportunities and connections that are going to be there. And then anyway, we've talked about from a preparedness standpoint is who knows what the world is bringing our way in the future, and you're going to want to have know the people who are the food producers and the landowners around you anyway. So it's right on every front.
Sure. It's exactly. I mean, I just answered a letter yesterday I got from a 71-year-old guy in Alabama. He's been very successful in business. He has this farm. He's got 6 grandkids. None of them is interested in the farm, but he's not that old. He's 71. He says, "Look, I'm independently wealthy. At 71, I just am not ready to go out and work the farm every day." He said, "Can you find me a young person that can come and be a partner and take over the place?" He said, I got all the marketing. He said, "I can sell anything, market anything. I just need a partner that can come and put in a day's work on the farm and being a partner with me." And I wrote him back, and gave him a couple ideas. Eagerfarmer.com is a website that our daughter-in-law runs. That's a matchmaking service.
That's what I was just going to say. You sound like you're about to start a matchmaking service. You already did it. Okay, there you go.
Yeah. It's called Eagerfarmer.com.
Okay.
I also encourage them to contact, Stockman Grass Farmer Magazine, put a classify ad, look, partner wanted, whatever. I mean, there are these things out there. Every community has them, and again, the average farmer is 60 years old. So finding an older farmer that you can just go spend your weekend, spend a couple evenings with, and just help them. Just don't ask for pay, don't ask for anything. Just put yourself in that, because it is a fraternity. It's a very small fraternity now, and so. Putting yourself into that fraternity, you'd be surprised what kind of opportunity comes along.
Well, there's one thing that's been nagging at me since the very beginning of our conversation. When you brought up this aging demographic of farmers, one of the things that we've seen in so many areas of the economy is the demise of the mom and pop operations and the consolidation into huge corporate conglomerates and big box whatever, town killer Walmarts get dropped in and that kind of thing. And about, I don't know, several months ago you and I talked about Amazon's buyout of Whole Foods market, and was that going to be a boom or a bust for the integrity food, small time producers, that kind of thing. And so the thing that's been nagging in my mind since the beginning of this conversation is, with all this farmland about to become no longer having active, the people who owned it in the last 2 generations or whatever are no longer going to be alive, and their heirs don't want to keep working it. It just seemed like, is this going to be one of these big, huge, kind of like another big land grab, where this time it's going to be Amazon or whoever's going to swoop in, and now we're going to have just one landowner, corporate conglomerate owning all the land. But maybe what you're saying is it's not so much the land ownership; it's the operation of the farming process that's available, and anybody who wants that opportunity. But if you would respond just on that question about, do you think we're going to see some huge consolidation of
Yes.
land ownership?
Yes, absolutely. We're already seeing it. We're seeing big money through Wall Street investment houses. There is especially in the Midwest, in soybean and corn country, there is already a land grab going on the corporate sector, and as well as foreign ownership. The Chinese, the Saudis, people with money, and the Chinese bought Smithfield, hog facility, largest American acquisition yet in history, and essentially they bought it because they could have raised all those pigs in China, but China, the problem is they don't have good water. They polluted all their water, and so they can't raise stuff as well as we can because their water's all polluted, and so. Buying the pigs, the U.S. pigs, is essentially a way to buy water, but you can buy water a lot cheaper in a pig in a pig carcass than you can shipping water over.
Oh my gosh! So okay, you just told us one more huge reason people should look into this lifestyle, and that is for patriotism. Save your country by helping a farmer, because otherwise we're all going to be working for foreign landowners pretty soon if we don't do it ourselves. Wow.
Yeah, who knows? But this is happening around the country, and it's certainly going to happen here. And we don't. Again, it's so hard to know what is going to happen. There are a few people who say that land is going to plummet.
Okay.
But with the food situation, the population situation, I tend to think that the land prices are here, and it's going to be. There might be pockets where it's very, very cheap, but in general, I think that we're in a race of transition, and is it going to continue to be family owned, that kind of idea, or is it going to be owned by conglomerates? And so anything that a person can do to help the land stay in private ownership,
right.
and personal ownership,
yes,
I think is in general a very helpful thing.
Wow, yeah, and it sounds like there's even if you look beyond that elderly generation of farmers, but if you look to their children, the next generation who maybe don't want to live a farming lifestyle, maybe they don't want to stay in one place, they want to move around or whatever, maybe they can't really split up the farm 4 or 5 ways, how many kids there are in the family, whatever. Maybe for them it's a boon too to have somebody willing to step up and say, hey, I'll farm the land, I'll keep your property taxes low for you. So they go, oh great, then we can hang on to this, we can keep it in the family.
Right. Oh, I can't tell you how many. I run into people. I can't tell you how many I run into that are in that situation. Look, I'm one of 3 siblings.
Yeah.
We're inheriting this farm. or we've just inherited it, but none of us knows anything about it. But we grew up there, or sometimes even a whole generation. It's grandma and grandpa's place, and we went there. We love it.
Yeah.
And we don't want to be the ones to lose it, but we don't know anything about it.
Right.
What can we do? And they're just and of course time is running out. Fences are
Absolutely.
going down. The barn roof, the last wind tore a corner off the barn roof, and those kind of things are very real. And so we're in interesting times, that's for sure. There are major disruptions going on, and it's I don't know what the other side's going to look like.
But that a generation from now, it's going to be very different from what it has been, one way or another.
Absolutely.
Yep.
There's no question in my mind. Yeah, I mean, we see it. We see the changes happening so much in our community. In fact, here's an interesting one. The largest environmental organization in Virginia is called Piedmont Environmental Council, PEC, Piedmont Environmental Council. They're one of the largest active environmental groups. They do a lot of conservation easements, and they're active in zoning, and they like government regulations. But they actually convened a couple of years ago. Convened the first conference that I had ever seen, and used the term tenurage. They're actually trying. Here you get a bunch of environmental radical liberals, and they're actually talking tenurage. The bottom line for them was they said, look, we've created all these frameworks for people to be able to buy land and hold on to land with conservation easements and all this stuff, with special concessions so they can age on the land and still hang on to it, pass it to their kids. But they said it doesn't do any good for these guys to just hire a neighbor to bush hog it twice a year. That's not good land stewardship either.
Right.
And so as an organization, they actually had this, come to Jesus moment where they said, what we really need is to team up all this land that we've protected with active farmers in the area so that we actually use the land for something.
Yeah.
And so they actually did a whole seminar on 99-year leases, which is, in Europe it's called tenure.
Yeah.
And that's how Prince Charles runs his duchy. He doesn't go out there and run all the chainsaws and set hedges and move cows. He's got, 100 farmers that lease his holdings.
Okay.
And so his income is rental income, and all these farmers do it. I mean, I was over there in England. I spent a week with a wealthy nobleman. He and his wife, they were actually noblemen. They owned 10,000 acres, which is like half of England. 385 houses and buildings. They own a whole village. They're royalty. I mean, they're Duke, whatever, Lord and Lady.
Sure.
And he had something like 50. He showed me the spreadsheet. He has like 50 farmers who rent his lands, and they and every one of them had the years in. This guy's got 30 more years. This guy's got 20. This guy's got 70 more years. And it's this whole flow chart of all these people that are renting. And this was developed essentially when the Magna Carta happened, and the peasants said, well, we'll allow royalty to occur as long as we get these long leases, so that it's okay if we don't own the land, but we want a really long lease so we can pass the lease down to our kids and that sort of thing. And that's exactly what they do. So you've got families that are 3 generations managing a piece of property that's owned by some lord or lady in London.
Yeah.
And that's the backbone. That's the backbone of the whole agricultural system. And so you can say, well, I don't like that. It's not private property. Blah 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 blah. But it's a different. here's a good one you love. I have a friend who went to China, Red China, right, communist China, did a farm there, and of course you can't own land there, so you have to lease it from the government, and so he leased 1,000 acres for $50 a year.
Wow.
Now, and it was it's a long term, I don't know what, 40-year or whatever lease.
Mm-hmm.
So so here we sit here and say, well, private property, and listen, I'm a red-blooded private property guy as anybody around, but at the same time, when you hear about something like that, well, I'm not so sure that there isn't something we can learn from somebody that allows. I had a group of farmers from Mongolia come here, and I asked these guys. There were four farmers from Mongolia. I said, okay, so if I wanted to have a farm in Mongolia, what would I do? They said, well, you'd create a business plan and you'd present it to the village elders, and if the elders thought it was interesting and would be helpful for the community, they would give you an okay. And if they didn't, you'd be out of luck. And I said, okay, so let's say that I did one that they thought, oh, that's kind of intriguing. That's not a good idea. Let's okay it. What would the land cost me? They said 25 cents an acre.
Uh-huh.
So there are all sorts of ways to cut this cake, and it's really interesting to see how it's cut in different places.
It does sound like there's many models all over the world, but right here in our own backyard, there's maybe an unprecedented opportunity within the last several generations, anyway, to be able to have access to land, being able to live on and work the land with basically almost no entry costs. So, Joel, our time is short, but if people want to find out more, you write, you speak prolifically. If people want to find out more of your words, where can they go?
Well, we have a website, Polyface Farms, Polyface. That's our farm name, polyfacefarms.com. Website there with lots of information and of course all my books and different things. My speaking schedule, where I'll be, that sort of thing. So, look us up at polyfacefarms.com.
We've been speaking with Joel Salatin. He is a renowned speaker, author, and activist farmer, and a teacher of all kinds of interns and others, volunteers. He produces all kinds of produce that they sell regionally there at Polyface Farms. But now we just found out tonight he's also a correspondent with incarcerated folks, trying to give them words of encouragement and life options going forward. Joel, this has been a remarkable learning adventure for all of us. So thank you again for joining us here on Reluctant Preppers.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.